Hello there guys, Colin here. I got asked on my Facebook page recently what decisions I make on materials, woods especially, when I'm building guitars. As I'm about to start 2 new guitar builds and just gone through the process of deciding which materials and woods I'm going to use for them, I thought now would be the ideal opportunity to talk you through my thought process. Now I want to put a disclaimer right at the start of the video, I am not igniting a tone wood debate here. Whether you believe that the overall amplified tone of an electric instrument is influenced by the woods and materials it's built out of or not is your own agenda at this point. But there's one thing we have to concede here, and that is that different materials, different woods will have a different acoustic properties, vibrate differently and sound differently acoustically, and this is important for an electric instrument. Firstly, for the sustain of the overall instrument strings and the instrument maintaining the vibrations of the strings, and secondly, you get physical feedback from the vibrating guitar, which influences how you play, how you feel about the guitar, and overall how the guitar just performs to you as a player. Whether you or your fans or the people in the crowd can hear it is a different subject to discuss entirely, but the physical feedback you get from the vibrating guitar, which is purely influenced by the materials and the way the guitar is built, that is important for any instrument, electric or acoustic. So that's the angle we're taking this video from. Structural integrity! The one single biggest factor you've got to consider when you're building guitars, or pretty much anything, is structural integrity. Some materials are hard, some are soft, some are rigid, some are flexible, and if you build the wrong parts out of the wrong materials, you're in for disaster. Consider the neck of the guitar, for example. If you build the neck of a guitar out of something flexible, your guitar's never ever going to work. So you've got to consider what materials are structurally capable of doing the job you want them to do. Unless I'm instructed to by a customer, I will usually build my necks out of maple. Maple is an extremely hard wood, very rigid, and makes a great material for building necks out of. So here I've got a block of flame maple and some bird's eye maple here. So yeah, one-piece maple necks are very strong. You can get quarter sawn ones which are even stronger. Ideally, if you wanted ultimate strength and rigidity from your necks, you'd choose to build them from multi-laminate layers. Multi-laminate, like you can see on this neck here, this is 2 pieces of maple with a mahogany slab in the middle. You'll sometimes see this 5 pieces maple and wenge or whatever. Usually there's maple involved there somewhere because of the strength of it. Now multi-laminate necks are more structurally secure than one-piece necks because the difference in the grain as you go across the different layers eliminates the danger, really, of snapping the neck along a certain grain line or any weaknesses in the grain that you might find in a one-piece neck. Not that it's usually a problem. I've never had an issue with one-piece necks. These sometimes tend to flex a little bit more than these, again because they've got a grain structure which will allow it to bend along the grain structure, but not really much. One-piece maple necks are usually strong enough to handle guitar strings up to pitch. But laminate necks are definitely a good bit stronger, but they're maybe a bit more expensive to make. The structural integrity argument also plays into the body and the headstock and various parts of the guitar, where you've got to decide, has my design limited or made the guitar not able to function if the body's too thin, or if you've taken too much off the headstock? Have you limited the guitar's ability to stay structurally sound? Because ultimately if the neck can bend and the headstock can flex, then you're going to have tuning issues. If your body's too thin, then you could find yourself snapping it if you hit it off of something. All these dangers you've got to take into consideration. So materials and design are all part of that. So you've got to decide what materials are strong enough to do what I'm doing, what ones are flexible enough to do what I'm doing, and make your decisions on woods based on that. Fortunately, there's quite some hard and fast rules. Maple is nice and strong, so you can make necks out of it. Mahogany is a little bit softer, so although you can make mahogany necks, and lots of people have, they do tend to be a little bit more prone to breakage. I mean, look at Gibson headstock getting snapped all the time, mahogany necks. So that's all to be taken into consideration when building a guitar. Aesthetics! The aesthetics of your guitar are going to play a big part in what materials you decide to buy. There's a lot of very nice looking woods, flames, quilts, burrs and all that sort of stuff. So if you're wanting a really pretty looking guitar with a flame maple top or even a flame neck, which are always gorgeous, then you're going to have to spend a little bit more money to get these pretty looking woods, and that may be a high consideration for you. If the guitar is a showpiece and it's going to go on a wall, or it's going to go to a photo shoot, or it's supposed to be on stage for people to look, oh, that looks amazing, then you're going to consider the pretty woods and the finish, and you're going to consider that a lot more than, say, the tonality or any other aspects that the woods or materials may have. Now at the moment I'm building another bloodbound guitar and I want it to look very pretty. So this is a 5mm madrone top with a beautiful burr. So this is going to look gorgeous when it's finished up and oiled. At the moment dry wood, non-finished wood never quite shows you the figure, but this is some gorgeous, gorgeous burr in here. So that was a big consideration on that guitar, how it looks. So I've got the madrone top, I've got a flamed maple neck, which is going to look gorgeous, and zircon board, which is nice, hard, bright sounding material, but it also has a lot of texture to the grain, a lot of colour difference and whatnot. So ultimately the guitar was meant to look good. I know it will sound good as well and respond well and resonate well and sustain well because it's made from high quality materials. The woods I've chosen, they aren't going to limit the guitar, and they're still going to make it sound and respond really, really well. But one of the biggest concerns is it needs to look really pretty, because I want it to be like a showcase sort of guitar that I show off. So this one looks were most important, but I still based the opinions on the structural integrity and ultimately how I want it to sound. Aesthetics is also the reason I may choose a one-piece body blank rather than a few pieces and glue them together. More expensive this way, but if I'm going to be applying a stained finish with a natural oil coating on it, then I want the guitar to look really, really nice. So one piece here, so you don't see any seam lines, and it will look great when it's done. Again, ash, there's more things to consider with this. It's very characterful, vibrates extremely well. The guitars that I've played that were made out of ash are some of my favourites. I think they just sound and respond much, much better than guitars made out of, say, mahogany, which I'm not a particular fan of, but they do have a particular feel and sound to the mahogany guitars. But yeah, ash and a maple neck and a maple board, and it's going to sound nice and bright and punchy, definitely. Tonality. Tonality and feel of the guitar are important influences in what materials you're going to decide on. Ultimately, something like ash is going to sound and respond differently to mahogany. It's a more dense, harder wood. Mahogany is a bit more open-pored and softer, so where mahogany will suck some of your vibration, this will retain it. There's this very subtle differences between materials like that that are perceivable to the player. Now my good friend Scoosh, who you've seen in the Mesa video and the one I built the Bloodbound for, has commissioned a new guitar from me, something more in line to this ash-bodied guitar. Now, he really likes his Bloodbound and he likes the sound it gives, but he noticed when playing this one that it's very different sounding to his Bloodbound. He noticed when he was playing this guitar that this one sounded a bit more bright and punchy than his Bloodbound, which was much more of a Gibson-esque rock machine. So he was looking for something that gave a good contrast between his guitars and commissioned something very similar to this. The biggest difference between this guitar and his Bloodbound is the materials. The constructions are very similar. There is a good few differences in hardware, scale length and all that, but ultimately his was made of one-piece mahogany with a rosewood board. This one is maple and ash. And even without the guitar plugged into an amp, you could tell that this one sounded a good bit different to his. Now, there's a lot of factors to consider here, like the thickness of the body, the thickness again of the neck, the radius, the scale length, the string gauge, the other hardware and materials, but a big influence on the way the whole guitar responds when it's in your hand is the materials vibrating, and I'm quite sure that was a big influence on what made him think that this guitar sounded a good bit different to his. So for Scoosh at least, going for ash and maple build like this was a much better idea for a punchy Pink Floyd-esque sort of guitar, whereas going for the mahogany and the rosewood and all that sort of stuff made a great rock and heavy metal machine. So again, considering the type of guitar and how it's going to be used and what kind of sound the customer wants from it will decide a lot of what materials I'm going to use to build it. The good rule of thumb, as always, is hard materials will sound brighter and sustain longer, whereas soft materials will sound warmer and not sustain quite so much. So these things are worth taking into consideration when you're building a guitar. What does your overall sound, what does your overall feel want to be? How much do you want it to sustain and ring? How much do you want it to have warmth to it? And then choose a combination of materials that will hopefully give you what you're looking for. Monies! Obviously, a big consideration on what you buy is how much money you have to spend on it. Perhaps a customer isn't willing to spend too much money on their build, or maybe you're working to a specific budget because you need to put money into other things. So you've got to choose your materials wisely to maximise the money, maximise use out of your money. So you might have to sacrifice that one-piece body for maybe a three-piece, just because you don't have the money to buy the whole one piece, which is more expensive. You may have to choose a less pretty top, downgrade from a quilt maple to a flame maple, purely because you don't have the money to afford the really pretty quilt. These are just unfortunate things. Pretty things cost more, high quality things cost more, so if you're strapped for cash, you're going to have to choose somewhere further down the line. So it's about how much money you can spend and what you want to spend the money on. So in recap, there's maybe 4 main areas that I consider when I'm getting materials in to build guitars, and that is structural integrity, aesthetics, your overall sort of tone and feel, and how much money I've got to spend. I'll tend to do a good bit of research when I'm deciding on these things, talk to the customers, make decisions on what they want, what would be best for them, and discuss it through with them, give them ideas. If they're looking for a pretty guitar, it's search all the different types of pretty looking woods and see what maybe suits best for their application, because hey, let's face it, quilt and flame maple is getting a bit boring these days. We need to move on to something else. I'll also check out quite heavily what families woods are from, what their density is, all that sort of idea, which gives you a good idea on how they'll resonate, how they'll sustain, and what sort of feel you'll get out of them. Anyway, I hope this has been somewhat informative, and you'll see a bit of the build processes on these guitars as I go along with them. Don't forget to subscribe so you can see all the content that I'm bringing out. I'm also available on all the social media, and you can leave a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what you think of anything, but please let's not start a tone with debate. I can't be arsed with it. That's all for now, guys. Take care and keep it loud.